For months, the United States has been inching toward a conflict most Americans barely realize is unfolding. Thanksgiving Day remarks by President Donald Trump announcing that U.S. action will very soon expand onto land against alleged Venezuelan drug traffickers may go down as the moment Washington crossed an invisible line. What began as maritime interdictions in the Caribbean is now morphing into something far more aggressive, a quasi-military campaign with little congressional oversight, an unclear legal foundation, and massive geopolitical stakes. The administration calls it a war on narcotics. Critics call it political theater. Latin American leaders warn it's something else entirely, a pretext for strategic dominance over oil and regional power. As an editor who has spent 15 years watching global politics tilt on small hinges, I can say this with confidence. America is entering dangerous, unpredictable territory. From sea to land, a rapid and alarming escalation. Trump's declaration that the U.S. will begin targeting Venezuelan trafficking routes by land marks a dramatic strategic shift. Until now, U.S. operations have been largely at sea, supported by the positioning of the USS Gerald R. Ford in the Caribbean. Naval operations are politically safer, distant, deniable, and framed as interdiction rather than intervention. Land operations, however, cross a threshold. They risk violating sovereignty, destabilizing local communities, and dragging the U.S. into engagements that look and feel like undeclared war. The Pentagon insists this is about detecting and dismantling transnational criminal organizations, but military leaders have not clarified where these land operations will occur or under what rules of engagement they will be governed. For Americans, the danger lies in the ambiguity. Wars rarely begin with formal declarations. They begin with incremental steps no one questions until it's too late. The intelligence gap, when targets aren't what they seem. One of the most troubling elements in this unfolding story is the growing evidence that some of the maritime strikes have been misdirected. According to reporting from U.S. military officers and independent investigators, vessels hit by American firepower contained no cocaine, no contraband, and no clear links to drug cartels. The administration dismisses these findings, but even foreign allies are alarmed. Killing unarmed individuals traveling in small boats, who may have been fishermen or migrants, raises severe legal and ethical questions. If such errors occurred at sea, where surveillance is easier, what might happen on land, where misidentification risks multiply? A drug war based on shaky intelligence is not just ineffective, it is dangerous. And when force precedes truth, accountability becomes a casualty. The Trump administration frames Venezuela as a nexus of narco-trafficking, but many regional leaders argue the narrative is flawed. Nicolas Maduro, branded illegitimate by Washington, maintains his denial of involvement in drug operations. And while his government has its own deep structural issues, international data does not support claims that Venezuela is a major fentanyl exporter. Colombian President Gustavo Petro went further in an interview with CNN, accusing the United States of disguising oil geopolitics as counter-narcotics. Oil is at the heart of the matter, he said, a bold claim from a leader who was recently sanctioned by the Trump administration. Whether or not Petro is fully right, he is not alone. Analysts across Latin America argue that Washington's real objective is not interdiction but leverage over Venezuelan oil, regional trade routes, and political alignment. If this escalates, narcotics may be the public justification, but the battlefield will be economic. The political calculus at home, strength through spectacle. Every modern president has used foreign policy to project power, but Trump's approach leans heavily on visual militarism. Aircraft carriers, explosions at sea, stern warnings delivered from military bases. As the 2025 political environment intensifies, these images serve a dual purpose. They feed a narrative of decisive leadership while distracting from domestic pressures. Inflation, border instability, economic inequality, and congressional gridlock. By expanding the mission to land, the administration can maintain a dramatic national security storyline. But American voters should ask, is this a strategic necessity or a political performance? The timing, late 2025 with national races heating up, suggests the latter is at least part of the equation. Latin America's growing alarm. Across the hemisphere, leaders are jittery. Brazil, Colombia, and several Caribbean nations have already expressed concerns about unilateral U.S. strikes. Memories of past U.S. interventions in Panama, Grenada, Nicaragua remain fresh in regional political consciousness. Many fear a return to an era when Washington acted first and explained later. Even nations that oppose Maduro worry that American military expansion will disrupt regional stability, inflame migration surges, and fracture diplomatic channels. Add to this the growing presence of China and Russia in Latin America through oil contracts, infrastructure projects, and arms deals, and the region becomes a complex chessboard where a single U.S. misstep could trigger a multi-power confrontation. If Washington expands force operations without partner support, it risks isolating itself in a region historically wary of U.S. militarism. The human cost. No one is calculating. Drug wars are always sold as operations against bad actors, but reality on the ground is far messier. Venezuela is a nation in economic collapse, with millions fleeing hunger and poverty. Criminal groups control certain regions, but civilians live within them, as farmers, transport workers, or small-scale traders. If the U.S. begins targeting suspected routes without verified intelligence, innocent people will die. Communities already suffering under authoritarian governance and economic collapse will be pushed closer to the brink. Human rights groups warn that a poorly defined U.S. mission could replicate the errors of past wars on drugs. From Colombia's false positive scandal to Mexico's militarized policing failures, these operations tend to produce spirals of violence, not stability. The drug trade is a symptom of deeper societal collapse. Bombs do not fix broken economies, and foreign firepower rarely dismantles entrenched criminal networks. What comes next? Escalation, backlash, or diplomacy? The United States now stands at a crossroads. The administration insists that a tougher stance will disrupt trafficking networks. Critics warn that such operations could provoke diplomatic retaliation, fuel anti-American sentiment, or trigger a humanitarian crisis. Ground operations deepen. Confrontations increase. Civilian casualties spark outrage. Venezuela, backed by Russia or Iran, retaliates in asymmetric ways. Cyber attacks, migration pressure, or proxy actions. Congress asserts oversight. Regional partners push back. The administration shifts from strikes to diplomacy, sanctions, and joint operations. A negotiated framework for drug interdiction and humanitarian relief emerges. Paired with long-term regional development, this path is unlikely without sustained international pressure. What's clear is that unilateral force rarely produces the outcomes American leaders imagine. The fine line between enforcement and intervention. America has every right to defend itself from the narcotics crisis, but defense must be rooted in truth, accountability, and respect for international law, not theatrics or miscalculation. Expanding operations onto land without a defined legal mandate is not strength, it is a gamble. History shows that conflicts begin quietly, through half-acknowledged missions, rhetorical escalations, and vague promises of quick results. Wars of choice become wars of consequence. As the U.S. prepares to very soon strike on land in the name of drug interdiction, Americans must ask the question too often ignored: are we preventing danger or sleepwalking into it? The line between security and destabilization has never been thinner, and once crossed, it may be impossible to walk back.